And joining me now, Sayed Mustafa Hoshesh, who is a lecturer at the Applied Sciences University of Iran, and from Ankara, Serhan Afajan, who is a domestic policy coordinator at the Center for Iranian Studies. Thank you both for joining me today. Sayed Mustafa, I'll start with you here in the studio. Talk to us about the history of the MEK. A lot of people haven't heard of them. I had never heard of them before. What is it that they want?
Hello, and thanks for having me. Well, as a matter of fact, they started before the Islamic Revolution in Iran. Back in 1976, 75, they started. And they first supported Marxism, Leninism kind of ideology and economy. And they were after a revolution, but an armed insurgency. They hunted many Americans and assassinated them before the revolution. After the revolution, of course, at that time, the leader of the Iranian revolution condemned them. I mean, this is before the revolution, the late Imam Khomeini, because of this armed insurgency and the kind of ideology that they were looking for. They believed that the gun should decide, actually. So they continued the same kind of policy. But they were defeated eventually in the first decade after the revolution. And when Iran was at war with Iraq, they went to Iraq, supported Saddam Hussein, received his protection. They were a party to the clampdown on the Kurdish population in northern Iraq, as well as the Shiite population in southern Iraq at the time of Saddam Hussein. And then they invaded the country, Iran, actually, after Iran agreed to the 598 UN Security Council resolution. But after Saddam Hussein was executed, actually, in Iraq and was toppled, they were receiving protection from the United States. Ever since then, they've been taken off the sanctions list. Right. They've been taken off the terrorist, the blacklist of the United States, the European Union, and Britain. And also, they have been assisting the United States with espionage operations against Iran, with the assassination of Iranian nuclear scientists, and they were moved out after this. They were moved out to some European countries, and they have their own lobbies now in Washington.
Okay, I want to turn to Serhan Afajan in Ankara. Serhan, in many ways, the MEK sounds like a cult. They're secretive. They don't let the media talk to them. So why do we care so much about the MEK?
Well, actually, as Mr. Mustafa also mentioned about the history of this organization, of this very interesting organization, it has actually a very long history. But the reason why we are talking about the MEK at the moment is because basically of their activities in the post-revolutionary Iran. They are responsible for a number of terrorist activities in the country, and they had, for example, military bases in Iraq, and later on they moved to Albania, and that is one of the reasons why they came to forth again as these days. And this is a very secretive organization, as you also mentioned. For example, we don't know the head of the organization, Masoud Rajavi. We don't know whereabouts of this man, for example, although Maryam Rajavi, his wife, is quite a famous figure and the president of the organization. So it is in many ways quite secretive, and if you take the stand of the organization seriously, they claim, for example, that they have membership inside the Iranian establishment, Islamic Republic, but we don't know anything about them. And they have, for example, financial resources. They organize huge meetings, especially in Paris every year, for example, and we don't know where their financial resources come from. So in many ways, this organization is quite a secretive organization, and many of their activities inside Iran are quite, and of course, legally speaking, going underground.
I want to play a couple of sound bites for the two of you, and you can comment on those. One from U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton in 2017, speaking in Paris at the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which is an umbrella coalition largely controlled by the MEK. Let's listen to what he had to say.
There is a viable opposition to the rule of the Ayatollahs, and that opposition is centered in this room today. Before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran. Thank you very much.
And earlier this year, the former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, and now President Trump's personal attorney, made this statement at the same conference.
We are now, I believe, very realistic in being able to see an end of the regime in Iran. We can see it.
So, Serhan, I'll ask you, the MEK has a lot of support in the United States. Why is that?
Well, because of the opposition and because of the enmity between some of the American politicians and the Islamic Republic. We know the story all the way from the hostage crisis onwards. Some of the American politicians were quite determined to overthrow the existing regime in Iran. And although some of the administrations, for example, the Obama administration, was quite sort of tolerant and quite rational, about the Trump administration, many figures like John Bolton, for example, Rudy Giuliani, for example, they are very much determined to overthrow the Islamic Republic. And they see the MEK as the only and most reasonable, viable alternative to the existing regime in Iran. That's why we hear this kind of interesting remarks by these people, especially in the Paris meetings each and every year. So there is nothing new about these remarks because the hardliners in Iran, in the United States, see the MEK, the Mujahideen Khalq, as the only viable alternative to the Iranian Islamic Republic.
Mm-hmm. Saeed Mustafa, why did the MEK move to Albania, and what does that say about Iranian-Albanian relations? Could that be damaging for relations between the two countries?
Sure, it seems that Albania has done the worst thing to itself, actually. They were forced to leave Iraq by the Iraqi government. The Shiite government of Iraq forced them to leave under the UN, of course. They were in Camp Ashraf in northern Diyala of Iraq, and they were trying to find a new home anywhere in the world. None of the Western countries agreed to accommodate them, to host them, actually. And it was the U.S. that forced Albania, as well as Cyprus, as well as there were some encouragements also by the United States to bring him to these two countries. Because they've been actually fit into the U.S. policy towards Iran. It's not just Donald Trump. Even under Barack Obama, they were given a role, specific role, with regard to the fight against Iran. One reason, as my colleague stated, is that they are the only existing option for the United States when it deals with Iran, because others are opposing each other. There is no opposition or united opposition against Iran. But the most important point is that they are the most radical with this dark history of assassinations. That's no secret to anyone. And people like Rudy Giuliani, Bolton, and Mr. Pompeo, and others, and Donald Trump, they need such, the most radical element to put it alongside the sanctions, because when it comes to the sanctions, they also reiterate that we want the harshest sanctions. So they want the harshest of anything, and very happily for the Islamic Republic of Iran, they are doing, they're rendering service to the Islamic Republic and to the ruling system, right? Because the MEK or MKO is the most hated, group in Iran. Others that are not coming along with each other, like the monarchists, the communists, the leftists, the Republicans, seculars. Anyway, they have some supporters, more or less. Though it could be argued how many they are, still they have supporters. But this MKO, they are even the most hated group among the opposition abroad.
All right, thank you both to Serhan Afajan and Saeed Mustafa Hoshesh. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.